So last year, my buddy, old pal, a Welsh friend of mine, Biff Weed, had the idea to rank the debut film of every major animation studio, in his opinion. And this was a cool idea, I'm glad he did it. But then I had the stupid idea to go, hey, what if I then did a follow-on ranking that was just the second film of every major animation studio? And here we are, the brief has been met, I've done it, and I have no idea how long this will be, but hopefully around the same length as his video. Of course, go watch it if you haven't, link in the description and all that, but it's not like it needs it. That video hit the algo well, and chances are this one won't, because I don't have a snazzy, concise word like debut I can put in the title. Why the hell did I think this was a good idea again? Alright, so I guess some of you are wondering what movies count for this, and you know what, I was wondering that too, so I guess I'll go in release order for this. We have 1940's Pinocchio by Walt Disney Animation Studios, 1988's My Neighbor Totoro by Studio Ghibli, 1996's Space Jam by Warner Bros. Animation, November 1998's A Bug Life by Pixar Animation Studios, December 1998's Prince of Egypt by DreamWorks Animation, March 2005's Robots by the late Blue Sky Studios, September 2005's Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit by Aardman Animation, 2007's Surf's Up by Sony Pictures Animation, 2011's Hop by Illumination, 2012's Paranorman by Laika, 2014's Song of the Sea by Cartoon Saloon, 2015's Little Prince by Paramount Animation. Okay, pause, quick note, technically Paramount Animation, to my knowledge, doesn't have an in-house animation studio, and The Little Prince is really just distributed by them. Technically, you could instead call this the fifth film by ON Animation Studios, but they're French, so I don't think they count. 2016's Storks by Warner Animation Group, and 2020's The Willoughbys by Netflix. I guess that's that. Without further ado, let's have an ad! This video is sponsored by G Fuel, your all-in-one cheat code in a can. Tell them what it's like, Cody.
Oh man, yeah, so like G Fuel was a real help getting into this surfing stuff. A lot of the time I really needed that kick, you know? This is what Cody sounds like now. It helped that despite being so tasty, it had zero sugars, carbs, or calories. It's pretty great that way.
Doesn't it contain caffeine?
Caffeine? Well, yeah, I guess, but that's why I drank it responsibly, you know? But you're a kid under the age of 18, so you probably should avoid it. Unless you want the hydration range, which doesn't contain any caffeine. I will not be the weakest link. Make me some of this G Fuel. Well, you can just purchase it. It comes in over 50 flavors and in tubs or cans. What is a can? Personally, I'm quite partial to raging gummy fish, you know, penguin and all, but there's lots for you to try. Moses, what are you doing?
I'm sorry, but I must unleash the power of G Fuel on you.
What is that?
This is what happens when you don't head to the link in the description and use code BLOODRUSH for 20% off your order of G Fuel.
Yeah, that's the code I use.
I don't know where I fit in this bit, but I'm Michael Jordan.
Anyway, let's get to the ranking.
No, that's fucking miserable.
Sometime back, I was thinking about doing a ranking of all 100 plus Asylum mockbuster films, but I decided that I don't hate myself enough to do that. Despite what I just said, I had to check multiple times that Illumination's Hop was not an Asylum mockbuster of Alvin and the Chipmunks. Because fucking hell, this is a miserable experience. At first I thought, oh, it's not too bad, but it says a lot that as I was typing to Biff Weed in DMs that it wasn't so bad, it immediately headed to the shitter. What's worse, a boring movie or a bad movie? It's a question everyone asks, but to me, I'd say a movie that pisses me the fuck off. If you put any fucking thought, and I mean legitimately any thought, the movie completely fucks off into a land of asinine bullshit so utterly rubbish that Danny DeVito thinks it needs to calm down. I hate every single character in this piece of shit. No, this whole shit. EB is an annoying asshole who never stops being an annoying asshole until he looks himself in the mirror and the Hoff tells him to fuck off and stop being an annoying asshole, so instead he becomes an annoying asshole, but less pronounced. Fred I thought was fine at first because he seemed to hate this piece of shit as much as I did, and I felt really bad for him just trying to get a job, being judged by his family for the fact that he wanted to find something he was satisfied with instead of doing any random job that would render him miserable, and then having his prospects ruined by this annoying rabbit bunny piece of fuck. But then immediately they just drop that, it's not important, and he becomes a complete dumbass. Carlos at first seems like a reasonable character, until you realize that this hard-working second-in-command, who seems to put more work into the company than the Easter Bunny himself, and wants a shot at a promotion, is actually the villain, and that the movie seems to be giving off the message that if you put in the work and believe that you deserve a shot at promotion, not even being pushy or anything, just asking for a chance, that you are in the wrong. And then at the end, what's his name, who the Easter Bunny objectively does not know about and has only been aware of the existence of for a few minutes and is not a bunny, does not know anything about this business or the complexities of what it does not work here, just gets the chance to be co-Easter Bunny with EB. Mind you, this entire movie begins because EB doesn't want to be the Easter Bunny and runs away to pursue a career he's more passionate about. So what's that supposed to say? Not only is it wrong to believe you deserve better if you work harder, but actually, you should just become friends with the boss's son to get preferential treatment. And you shouldn't actually pursue your dreams, but instead settle into the job your family is pressuring you into out of obligation. There is no scene where EB realizes actually he does have passions for the Easter Bunny job. Like, okay, he does some training shit or whatever, but it's a completely nonsense scene. But he goes off to pursue his actual dream and then doesn't. What a completely useless movie. A worthless, utterly garbo 1 out of 10 waste of time. There is a limit to the amount of energy left in the universe before it becomes a cold abyss of stillness. And when that happens, I want you to remember, in whatever afterlife may or may not exist out there, that there are people, you may even be one of them, that wasted some of that precious energy watching Hop. And worst of all, some people wasted some of that energy making it!
Say goodbye to Exodius!
A Bug's Life is not a bad movie by any means, but there's little word that comes to mind better for it than tropey. It is the most liar-revealed story I think I've ever seen, and it says a lot that when I went to watch it for this video, I thought it was one of the ones I'd not seen before. Then about 10 minutes in, I realized, oh, I actually have watched this before, I just remembered nothing. And now having gone to watch it again, I still remember fucking nothing about it. The movie is about a bug's life, and that's all it marketed itself at. It's not called Flick's incredibly interesting, nuanced adventure through the morality of the human condition for a reason. It's a movie where the most memorable and entertaining part is a villain voiced by someone who is about as nice as the character he plays. It's also a movie that has like 3 climaxes: the fake bird, the ant uprising, the chase to the real bird, all while being a less interesting or funny version of Chicken Run. Or I guess Chicken Run is the good version of A Bug's Life. Being as they are movies about a bunch of animals being exploited by those bigger and stronger for the sake of food, only for some guy with a ridiculous idea to give them all hope with a plan involving flight until the big liar reveal happens, and everyone finds out the hope they had was for circus performance, and then they come around anyway, and who fucking cares? A Bug's Life, I think, excels at nothing in particular, and it has nothing in particular to do or say. It is a serviceable enough movie, and that's all it is. It's also the first movie I watched for the marathon wherein I couldn't call the animation particularly great, so that's a thing, and probably the most acceptable thing about it. I guess the halfway good news here is that the only truly bad movie on this was Hop.
I can get you a bird, I can get you 10 birds. I want my bird.
Storks has to be the most impressive glow down yet, but I'd be hard pressed to call it an outright bad movie. It's just that it came after the Lego movie. It has plenty of problems, sure, but at the very least, this movie is pretty funny overall. While it does sometimes lean a bit too far into self-aware, well, that happened kind of humor where something illogical happens and then the character says, actually, that's illogical. Generally, the delivery of them tends to work, and when it goes for other kinds of humor, it usually knocks them out the park. The gay wolves are hilarious, they're just wonderful to watch, and as much as I saw almost all of their jokes coming, the delivery always got me. Unfortunately, while the comedy sure is good most of the time, the rest of the movie doesn't really work for me. The movie does not make the most sense. I didn't really understand the problem with the storks having safer work that involved delivering packages, especially now the company is more inclusive and has more birds than just storks, and it doesn't seem like humanity is suffering as a result of them changing their duties. While Hunter is a corrupt CEO, at least to some extent, with his manipulation of his workers and abuse of Robins, I just don't see the system as being as wrong here, just the boss. It almost feels like it's giving an unintentional traditionalism over change message. And like, it shouldn't be hard to make a corporation look bad, but when you're making it look bad by now it's less dangerous and more inclusive, ergo it's worse, not that I need the most in-depth storks lore explained, but the basic concept of the movie could do with a bit of explanation, you know? I also didn't really like the prerequisite final act breakup. I did not care, and it's paced fucking horribly. It's definitely not a strong movie, but like, I enjoyed it enough. I think its overall quality is pretty close to A Bug Life, which definitely has the much stronger villain. But a villain with minimal screen time doesn't make up for A Bug Life's overall boringness to me, and Storks is just generally more entertaining. Doesn't really matter though, I'm not fussing here, I don't care.
You guys are
Look at the size of that nose.
Disney's Pinocchio is a movie where nothing much happens, but it sure is fun. When it comes to just visual appeal, this has to be one of the best on the list. Everything feels so alive. It's from that era of Disney animation that exuded a level of life that almost nothing can match. There's such a gorgeous, tactile, living feel to all the motion, action, even the most subtle of movements. Every character has exaggerated body language in the best way. It leads to a movie that never bores the eye. It's always full of life and vibrancy. The music is also pretty good, with Wish Upon a Star being such a phenomenal song and great opener to the movie. Unfortunately, I think everything else kind of falls a bit flat to me. The story, if you can call it that, is pretty much three mostly unrelated things that are barely strung together. Pinocchio gets brought to life by a fairy that looks like she's from a completely different movie, though that might be intentional to make her seem a bit, out of this world. He tries to go to school but instead does a show, then he gets kidnapped and escapes, then he gets kidnapped again and taken to an island where a kid turns into a donkey, and then he escapes, finds out somehow his dad has been eaten by a whale at the bottom of the ocean with less than no setup or precedent for that, and we find out not only did he somehow manage to pull that off, he brought his cat and his fucking fish along with him too. And then they escape. One of the most spectacular fuck-ups in cinema, and feature-length films weren't even 4 decades old at this point. And then Pinocchio kinda just saves him and that's it. It's a bit of a wild ride, but in the sense of being a ride that doesn't really make any logical, coherent sense, and you end up in a different park by the end of it where security has to escort you out for not paying to go in. As charming as Pinocchio is, I don't really feel like anyone was that interesting in this movie. I don't care for the characters or the stories. The morals, I guess, were fine. Smoking bad, avoiding school bad, listening to random strangers bad, and so on and so forth. But without any interesting characters or much of a story, I just personally didn't care for them. The movie is hard carried by the gorgeousness of its animation, and honestly, how amusingly random it is. A lot of stuff just happens because of reasons, and that's kind of funny. I'm trying to think of more things to say, but generally the movie isn't very interesting to me. It has dark elements, it has fun elements, it is a good enough movie, but it didn't stand out beyond how it looks. The movie has a lot of ass though, cricket ass, statue ass, puppet ass, and the big titty puppets. Why does this movie love ass so much?
Cause your rapping sucks more than Space Jam did!
Space Jam is not a movie that's better written than Pinocchio. It's not even a good movie, it's a terrible movie. It's a poorly written, absolutely brain-dead, story-avoidant, and nonsensical movie. But it's a very fun one! Space Jam is a movie where pretty much nothing works. This movie is not part of my childhood, so I don't have the same bias for it that a lot of people do, but even without that bias, I found this a lot of fun. It's a movie where Michael Jordan gets dragged into an interstellar cartoon basketball game to save the Looney Tunes from falling to slavery. There's a furry bait bunny, there's Bill Murray for some reason, and there's stretchy Michael Jordan. This movie is so lacking in substance that I genuinely don't know how to extend this segment any further. It's just a bunch of stuff. It's just stuff that happens. It's a story that barely makes sense and at every turn does something stupid. But I do enjoy it. I'm not a basketball guy, I don't care about Michael Jordan, and while I am fond of the Looney Tunes, they're far from my favorite bunch of characters. But the movie is fun, and that's kind of what matters. Plus, the animation does look really good. Why the fuck did the animators want to ram this rabbit into the mattress though?
Itchy, wretched, rusty, my ass!
Robots is a movie where I think the world and the ideas are better than the actual film itself. This world is imaginative and amazing. Everything is expressive and characterful. It's a world that I want to see more of, a world of robots, where we see how they age and how they continue to propagate their society, where we see how they live and how they grow. It's a truly wondrous world that has been built and manages to be so genuinely enthralling, but it's also saddled to a plot that on one hand is good, but also boring. How is it good? Well, it's a movie that has a core theme of how the rich will exploit the poor, and how those in power have monetized the human condition for their own benefit at the expense of the layman. The rich don't just take away easy access to simple medical care to promote the more expensive stuff while stubbing the poor, they go out of their way to try and interfere and get rid of those who would try to just do good, honest work to help others. Any attempt to better the lives of people will get caught up in waves and waves of governmental red tape, and it's so cool a message not just because it's thought-provoking, but because it plays into the world of robots. The themes can aptly apply to reality, but also fantastically work to give us a reason to explore the depths of this world. It also has two pretty entertaining villains for different reasons. There's also Big Weld, who unironically is a really fun character. Gotta love me, a former famous superstar ubermensch there to inspire others and never give up, who for various reasons gives up on his past and becomes a bum who doesn't have it in him to help anymore. I also, while not loving Ronnie, did enjoy his relationship with his father, and I thought it was very wholesome, and in general there was a lot of fun familial stuff in the film. But on the other hand, this movie did not leave any impression in terms of like what happens in it. Point A and Point Z are remembered, and the world that was viewed on the journey too, but the events of the journey are just in one ear and out the other. It's a movie that also can't decide if it wants to tell really fucking funny jokes, or really crass toilet humor that don't land. Half the time, the movie is dropping banger lines and wordplay, and the other half, Robin Williams busts out into a dance party for no reason and lol random. The movie doesn't know what it wants to be as a story. It feels like a movie that wants to show you the world it imagined through an applicable theme to real life that is so steeped in just the way the world works you might not even notice its applicability, which is it's really well written, but it's just not doing it for me. It doesn't hit me where I think it should, and that's a shame. It's not a bad movie, but it could have been so much better with a little more work.
I have no son.
The Willoughbys is pretty fun, but I think that's all it is. The movie has some entertaining characters, and some even have character development, as well as hilariously over-the-top cruel parents that are incredibly entertaining and lovely to watch fuck off and die. It has pretty consistently decent but not incredible humor with a few genuinely pretty good laughs. The movie overall I thought was just kinda there. It was very just textbook kids movie of the era. It's delightfully dark at times with its humor. It has eccentric characters, a third act breakup that I guess is maybe kind of fine, and a hilariously over-the-top ranking of stakes and scale that comes out of nowhere and feels right out of a children's book. But there's really not much that sticks with me in this one. While it has overall better consistency than pretty much any of the films ranked below it, I can't say it's terribly thrilling. I don't think I'll be coming back to this one, but if I do, I know I won't be miserable. It's a fun family film, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. The ending is quite nice, love me a good found family story, and I think the hilariously over-the-top orphanage system is quite funny. And overall, decent movie.
But in the British version, everyone talks in a British accent. What?
Wilbert and Gary, shamanistic suffering of the human hair, is a really fun time. I quite enjoy this one, and it's one of the nicest looking films on this list, almost just because I have a love for stop motion. There's a life and sparkle in all the character sets and motions, it just speaks to me. I truly do love how this looks, and thankfully, the looks accompany a fun, amusing, and characterful film that I really do think you don't need any experience with the source material to enjoy. This may be a feature film about pre-established characters set within a pre-established continuity, but the movie I think gives you all you need to know to understand it, and just lets you have fun with it. Being as it is incredibly simple and not really that nuanced a film, I don't have all that much to dig into because I can't help but feel like a majority of what I like about this movie amounts to one of those, hey, look, that's funny. The writing may be a bit Americanized by Wallace and Gromit standards, but it still has that British dry wit and charm, and it certainly does sound like it smells British. There's more than enough laughs to fill this movie to make up for its problems. It has a lot of great jokes. Special mentioned when the dogs just stop fighting because the thing they're traveling on stops moving, and they just dig through their purses to find a coin to start it back up, and then immediately get back to fighting. I fucking love gags where two characters fighting just stop briefly in mutual understanding to do something silly, and then not address that it happened at all right after. And yeah, the villain is just delightful. He's not the most engaging villain, nor the most intimidating on the list. Honestly, I'm not even sure I call him the funniest, but he's definitely up there and just being a riot to watch. He's just so unabashedly evil. He's the British Verminator, and that's amazing. British humor already speaks to me more as an Aussie than American humor, so that's fantastic. And the characterful animation might do a lot for pretty much every character, but especially for Victor. Combined with the great vocal performance and entertaining writing, it makes him a constantly fantastic threat to watch. And he probably gets closer to accomplishing his goal than half the villains in this ranking, which is fucking hysterical. Overall, a pretty fun movie. Obviously not going to be an emotional clincher or a particularly deep watch, but it's fucking Wallace and Gromit, not Memento.
No, fingerprints.
The Little Prince is an enthralling, exciting, and masterfully crafted movie. Adapting the story of the Little Prince perfectly with stunningly gorgeous stop-motion animation that truly looks like the drawings ripped themselves into the third dimension and reenacted the story just for us, blended with a wonderful tale in the modern day that parallels and complements the original book while also adding enough meat to push it to feature length. For about the first 2 acts of the movie, because after that it really falls off to me. The film's first 2/3 are fantastic. Telling a story where nobody actually has a name, perfectly reflecting the book, and having probably the most interesting premise for a direct sequel I've ever heard for The Little Prince, because there are a lot of concepts for a Little Prince sequel, but this might be the best one. A story where in the modern day, the Aviator is still alive, and the Little Prince novel, just as is portrayed in the book, is in-universe the mad ramblings drawn out onto paper of this guy. The question of how much of it is real or actually happened doesn't matter in the movie, because all that matters is that to the Aviator it was real, and it had meaning. I think that's a fantastic continuation of the themes of the story, a story that tells you to hold on to the ability to enjoy life as a child would, instead of forgetting what it means to be a kid as you grow up. A book that ends on a note that leaves you to ask if you want to think with the objective and closed-minded brain of an adult and say the prince is dead, or think with the wonder of a child and imagine what really happened to the little prince. It's a book that has themes that involve what happens after death that can touch those religious and atheists alike, because it posits that the body is a shell, and there is something you cannot see that truly defines the value and beauty of a person. You can apply pretty much whatever religion you believe in, they almost all think there's something going on beyond the physical world, or you can apply it to the vague and not religious idea that the influence of a person, the memory of them, will live on, that nobody is dead as long as you remember them, and as long as you remember that person, then they will in some way influence and inform your decisions moving forward in life. Meaning that even those who don't know it may be shaped and affected by that person, continuing their legacy in a more hypothetical sense that gives more meaning to human life than the closed-minded idea of it just being you live, you die, and that's it. It's a story that's hard to continue, but leaving the question of how much of it happened, and giving you, the watcher, the chance to decide for yourself if you want to go with the Occam's razor and say this man is just crazy, or if you want to think with wonder and assume that, yeah, it did happen in this world, he's telling the truth. That's perfect. And having him talk to this kid about it and regale his story, getting her enthralled in the adventures and the tale of the little prince, how it reflects her life and how she is so dissatisfied with the ending and her inability to accept it, it's all fantastic. I didn't care that much for the little girl as a character. I thought that she kind of just retold the same themes as the little prince, but somehow with even less subtlety. But I did genuinely like her relationship and friendliness with the old man. The retelling of the story was as beautiful and as gorgeous as I'd hoped, and I thought it was a really fun movie with strong emotional beats and a gripping tale. Those who don't know how the book ends would be left with the wonder of what happens at the end, but those who do know would be left with the question of, I wonder how the little girl will accept and interpret it. And I think, in her own way, not truly understanding it is the perfect reaction. The book's ending is not one that's perfect for adults or for kids, but for adults who can think like kids. But then the movie kind of just becomes this tonally completely different adventure where the girl just goes on a journey that's akin to the little prince, and it kind of lost me there. I don't dislike it or anything, I just don't really vibe with it. Unlike The Little Prince, which is a story of such wonder that not only could I decide to take it as having happened in this world, but I want it to, this Little Prince follow-on is so visually boring and so rooted in modern culture to the point of losing the timeless elements of the original story, and it stars a fucking just droll and uninteresting take on an adult little prince that I don't care about. I'm not invested in this. It's retelling the story they already told, but worse. I do not care to see these timeless characters made to be rooted in today's culture. The guy who wastes his life lighting a lamp at given times because he has to, that's his job, does not need to be updated for the modern day. He's perfect as what he is. To be clear, I don't dislike the concept of a follow-on to the Little Prince story if it felt tonally congruent with what's happening. I understand why it's updated to the modern time. This is her version of the tale. I understand why the little prince is this way, as it reflects the person that her mother is slowly turning her into. I understand why it is the way it is. I just don't like it. I think there has to be a better way to handle the idea of giving this girl her own version of the story to help her cope with the death of her closest and only friend. Because I like the idea of it, just not the execution. Also, the aviator staying alive at the end I think is antithetical to the message of the Little Prince. The idea of her going to see him one last time, getting to show to him the book that she made with his drawings, and have him close his eyes, go silent with a smile on his face, and then the next day he's not in bed anymore and she can't see him again, reflecting how he saw the prince die, and the next day couldn't find his body, will not only reflect the themes of the tale better, but also be the single most emotionally powerful thing on this list. But as is, because they didn't do that, it's just an unambiguously feel-good ending that I don't think has the same truly profound, bittersweet wonder of the original story. But as I said, the first 2/3 of the movie are amazing, capturing all I could want in both an adaptation and continuation of The Little Prince. I definitely recommend checking it out, because at worst, you're getting a great adaptation with a limp ending, and at best, you might vibe a lot more with the last act than I did, and thus it could be even better for you than it was for me.
He's about to graffiti our neighbor's wall, and it's not cool to paint on someone's wall.
Some people call My Neighbor Totoro one of the best movies in Studio Ghibli's lineup. They consider it a masterful work, One full of wonder, expression, serenity, and a and there was a right coughing, and a homely and lively slice of life vibe that few movies can match. Me? I disagree about it being one of Ghibli's best. The rest, though, I accept. If a movie like Pinocchio is what you call a film with no story where nothing happens, you could arguably call My Neighbor Totoro a movie with no story where a lot happens. It isn't a movie driven by plot, by conflicts and resolutions and a goal at the end of the day. It's a movie driven by the events of day-to-day life. It's a movie you watch because you care about the characters, and if you do care about them, which you probably will, you'll enjoy just experiencing their days as they come. The movie is a great one to just relax to just sit back and enjoy a film about the lives of these girls in rural Japan. There's some drama, sure, and there's a problem to resolve at the end, but most of the movie follows these two living their life, adapting to where they moved and meeting this big, furry fuck! But it never feels so urgent as to get in the way of the purely relaxing, homely feel. There's a warmth to this movie that cannot really be described. If you've lived a life with family and loved ones, then this movie has that indescribable feeling of comfort in spades. It is kind of the main problem with the movie, admittedly. While a fun, cozy film that can be watched to help someone relax, it doesn't have much urgency and tension. That isn't a flaw in the sense that it's something the movie does wrong, it's just that for what I look for in movies, rarely do I personally want films that are just slice of life stuff with no drama or story. One could say it's kind of a miracle that I like My Neighbor Totoro as much as I do given what it is and my preferences are. But in not having more than a couple particularly exciting moments, at least in my opinion, it does fall short to me of a lot of Studio Ghibli's best films. Again though, it's really good. The animation is still phenomenal, and there are magical moments like the tree or the cat bus flying or just Totoro. He's lovable, especially when he does his "I'm going to consume this child" face and then screams while shitting himself. I guess I'll address now, some might be considering why this Ghibli film? While some, including myself, do consider Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind to be a Ghibli film retroactively, thus being the first technically, the first truly to be made under the name is Laputa, and then after that was the double feature of Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies. Technically, either of those or both count for this, but for me personally, while I think Grave of the Fireflies is a masterpiece, it's just not the kind of movie I can bring myself to watch often. I just didn't personally feel like watching it again for this video, and that's all there is to it, shut up. Surf's Up is such a unique movie. This is a movie that feels like it deserved to start a trend and get flooded with terrible rip-offs of itself. I mean, other than that one that started Vince McMahon for some reason. As someone who grew up watching these kinds of sports documentary films and has a history in cricket and that sport culture, that environment and the communities propagated by sport, this movie really connects to me. Please don't tell me I'm the only movie reviewer online who has a connection with sports culture. Better than anything, it captures the heart and soul of sporting culture. That friendly rivalry, those dickheads that exist and try to be cooler than they are, just that vibe and that tone and that feel. It perfectly marries the parody element and the comedy, while also being a serious and heartfelt story that, hey, look at that, Penguin Big World. This does have some crass humor, yeah, but I think there are a lot of banger jokes in this, a lot of comedy that plays into the mockumentary format, and has some truly enthralling and magical shots only possible because of how the movie wants to frame itself. It's a story that truly and genuinely is married to its framing and its themes. A story that feels like a parody and straight play of the cliche standard sports movie narrative, but because of its absurdist nature, it ironically feels more realistic than a lot of actual sports documentary films that try to force the narrative they want to tell into reality. In those, you can sometimes feel the unreal nature of things. I guess for a modern example, musician bioflicks and that fad started by Bohemian Rhapsody and the like would be today's version of the sports documentary film craze of the past. And you can just sometimes feel when they try to make a story out of reality that doesn't reflect history, because nobody actually wants to watch the real history of one of the most famous musicians in the entirety of the Homo sapiens species. But because Surf's Up doesn't even attempt to make you buy that it's reality, it's a lot easier to buy some of the tropes and cliches as happening in the world. Because you're not thinking, well, hold on, that doesn't really feel like that would have happened. The movie's themes are pretty standard. Don't give up on your dreams, don't hold your heroes to an unreasonable and unrealistic standard, do what you love because you love it and not just because you want to win, but they do connect with me because of the way they're portrayed. There's never a moment where the protagonist Cody Rhodes stops to talk about the lessons learned. You can just see them, you can tell just because the movie trusts you to. There's not even that moment where the run-down old hero tells the protagonist how thankful they are. Big Z tells Cody through actions and not words. And the only time he mentions what Cody did is when he's doing it specifically to give Cody credit in public, which actually makes sense as a way to frame that moment instead of Big Z going up and saying, "Cody, thank you for helping me find myself again, you're the best guy ever." All you need prior is him thanking his niece for bringing Cody into his life and never giving up on him. That's all you need! And I just love that the film doesn't play into the trope of the villain won, but in spirit the hero did. Because that can sometimes feel like it shoots the message in the foot. You know, you're making one of these movies, you're probably not Rocky. You can do something else. Instead, it's the side character comic relief who wins, which not only is a really funny joke when it gets dropped so casually, but it actually plays really well into one of the movie's themes. Don't do what you love to win, but because you love doing it. That's what really matters. Winners aren't those who want to win, it's just those who enjoy their life. Joe is the only guy who came into this competition solely to have fun instead of to win. And he does so well because he's having a good time. He became so skilled because he just kept enjoying himself and doing what he loved. It actually plays really well into the themes while also being really funny. And yeah, I did like the antagonist quite a bit. Tank is just a really fun shithead. So for giving me a surprisingly relatable and amazing sports community vibe, with fun characters, especially Big Z, and a completely unique, one-of-a-kind experience, Surf's Up was so much better than I remembered it. And I still remembered it being really good.
Gordon Bennett, yes, Chen, everybody's dead, Dave.
Paranorman is a surprisingly good film, and I say that because I had no expectations going in. I'm a huge Coraline fan. I love that movie. Paranorman isn't even close to Coraline, but it's still genuinely very good. Obviously it's gorgeous, no shit, it's obvious anyone who can use eyeballs, this movie is fucking gorgeous. Yes, the designs are pretty ugly in a lot of ways, but the stop motion is just so good. The colours are gorgeous when they pop off, and the character designs are still at least full of character. The story of this movie is surprisingly dark, and I like that the darkness of it isn't front-loaded. It's part of the big reveal that recontextualizes the town and setting overall. The town is constantly abusing Norman because he sees ghosts but they can't, so they think he's weird and dumb. And they constantly exploit the famous witch legend their town is involved with for their own monetary gain. And when it is revealed that the zombies who rise up from the dead later and the witch who cursed them are not just connected, but that the zombies are the former townsfolk who sentenced the witch, a child as young as Norman, to death for the same reason Norman gets abused every day, it really hits as a reveal. It really works to make everyone seem in the wrong, which in a bad film would be a problem because you'd be rooting for everyone to die. But this is a good film that understands that this is a bad thing and has the characters rightfully chew out the townsfolk, the zombies, and to a lesser extent the witch. I think the last bit can be seen as a bit awkward given the scene is Norman saying that the witch is wrong for her actions, despite being an 11-year-old girl who got executed for no reason. But I think the idea is more that Norman is trying to stop the witch from remaining in this cycle of hatred and pain, and for her to just let herself be free and be at peace, which just make the scenes overall. When the witch just weakly says that she wants her mum, and Norman has to remind her that her mother is gone, and she realizes that the only reason she's not with her mother right now is because of her anger and the spite that has prevented her from moving on. The film in the end is about cycles of hatred and bigotry, and how the simple and easy temporary solutions that are pushed onto Norman by his uncle are just small band-aids on a bigger problem that just grows and grows until the small solution no longer works. The only way to truly end these cycles is for someone to choose to stop, to break the cycle, and just talk with people to fix the problem. Norman doesn't figure out the problem through reading books, hearing legends, using Google, but by understanding the villain, talking to her, and helping her work through the problems, and realizing she's not the villain, she is just a villain. Everyone else is also a villain. Plus, the movie is pretty funny. There's some dirty humor that's a bit childish, but there are more than enough genuinely funny gags in this to make me find it overall funny. The only issues I have with the film are that the whole seeing ghost thing specifically kind of disappears at a certain point. Norman starts seeing omens, and then the zombies show up, and we don't really get to see ghosts again for a lot of the movie. Which is a shame, because they look great, and I love the entire opening sequence, seeing both how others see Norman, and then getting a look at how he sees the world. It's a shame they don't appear much in the later parts of the movie. I also feel like the cast isn't all they could be. I really like Norman and his mate. The base buff gay man is pretty cool despite not getting to do much and has a few really enjoyable lines. And the sister is also fine, but I feel like her big coming to support Norman moment is a bit out of nowhere and could have used more build up. And the bully is there, but feels like he never adds more than the occasional funny line and a lot more unfunny lines. But that doesn't tank the movie too much for me. I really enjoyed Paranorman and I'm quite happy I got to watch it.
It's a sea shanty and it's darn touchy.
Song of the Sea is a breathtaking, magical, ethereal movie that marries a believable set of characters who grow and mature as people with a mythical, impossible, and enthralling setting based on classic Celtic mythology. It should be no surprise that as someone who loves mythology, how humans saw the world before they knew better and what we once believed in and rationalized the reality we didn't understand as, that I love movies that really work in mythology into the story. And along with incorporating mythology, it uses an extremely striking animation style that, despite its seeming simplicity, especially at a standstill, is gorgeous in motion, using folk and naive art as its inspiration to craft a movie that at times feels like ancient Celtic artwork brought to life. The movie looks so good, and it's the most deceptively good looking film on the list because it's one that I'm sure can be made to look really bad if the wrong parts are shown. But at its best, everything is beautiful. But taking away all the magic bullshit that happens in the movie, at the core of this film is a story about loss and how it can destroy a family. The loss of the protagonist's mother devastates him and his father, and the effects ripple out to every major character involved. As much as one can look at Ben's cruelty and Connor's neglect and consider them proper cunts for it, it's understandable that Ben, as a young little shit who knows nothing about anything, can't really process his emotions, let alone how his sister might feel. And Connor genuinely does care, he's just so broken and lost that he seems to feel nothing anymore. Ben's journey to realize how fucking shit he is and how the movie explores his relationship with his sister make the film. And with the sister being a mute character, the way in which they put extra effort into getting her feelings across through her movements and expressions and actions make her feel alive than most characters. And of course, when she finally does speak, it is just a heartwarming moment. I love that shit, man. When the mute character finally speaks again in any story, this would be a contender for one of the best of them. If Yakuza 3 didn't exist and managed to make it simultaneously heartwarming and also the stupidest thing in video game history. Of course, the mythological inspirations definitely add a lot to the movie for me. The movie brings to life these entities and creatures in such a lively way. The great Shanahai, Maka, and Mananan Maklia are so gorgeous in motion and so enjoyable in design. I especially love when Maklia awakens. Not only is the scene enthralling and gorgeous, but the way he just smiles to his mother and doesn't blame her for her actions is so wonderful. In general, Maka is pretty great and is interesting in how she exists as a character unfairly judged by reputation in universe into being viewed as pure evil, when really, she's just as broken as our heroes, being someone who's also affected by death destroying her family. And I did mention how nice this movie looks, right? Putting these watercolor backgrounds and elements into this 3D sort of space, it looks so nice. The characters all really pop in the movie and it makes the movie feel like it itself is a drawing. Not the obvious, yeah, no shit sense, but in the sense that everything in universe is a drawing. It's so hard to explain, but it's a really unique look that I just adore. No surprise, because when I was watching Biff's video nobody watched, Secret of Kells is the movie that visually interested me the most. Should go without saying, the titular Song of the Sea is pretty gorgeous too. It's wonderful. The movie is simply stunning. It's a genuinely gorgeous, fantastic, meaningful movie. And it looks nice.
I split your ass in half like I did the Red Sea.
This is where things get tough. I already talked about all I loved about our #1 film, The Obvious Prince of Egypt, back in a recent video, ranking all of Schaefer Ulster's top-ranked movies across his film rankings. Definitely head to that video if you want a more definitive explanation, but here goes nothing. The Prince of Egypt is a movie that defies expectation. You expect this, based on the nowadays reputation of DreamWorks and the very premise, to be a silly, dumbed-down movie that follows the basic framework of the biblical story of Moses, with a ton of pop culture references and goofy moments. Maybe you don't expect a bad movie, but you don't expect anything amazing. Then you realize this was before Shrek, and instead, we have here a movie that adapts all the dark subject matter of its source material, that tackles the chilling nature of dictators and how they attempt to justify their actions, that asks whether or not a man who goes from a monster to a good person truly deserves praise if they only turned that way because they found out they were in the same group as those they were putting down, that indulges in the whimsical but also terrifying nature of an all-powerful deity, that depicts all the majesty of the incomprehensible and supernatural, and that explores how two people who loved each other more than the world itself could be turned against one another. There are people who don't realize until they're older that maybe some of their family and loved ones weren't the best in general, that maybe growing up with them they were blind to the terrible people they were living with, and Moses I think captures that perfectly. He captures that kind of realization flawlessly and how tough it can be to confront this kind of revelation and take a stand against the people you love to try and show them against all that they believe they're in the wrong and that they've been doing terrible things in their life. There are people who realize their view on life isn't the healthiest and turn to things such as potentially spiritualism to find themselves again. Though of course this, and the scene and song in general, the In Heaven's Eyes bit, it could represent any number of things. Despite the song being a character talking about how Moses should accept that only God can truly be the judge of whether he did good, the message overall of the song is applicable to life generally. The idea that whatever wrong you did yesterday or a year ago, it's not today. Recognizing your mistakes, but also what you did right, and choosing to take actions that benefit others and stop making those same mistakes is what truly matters. That righting the wrongs is the next step from accepting them. That doing better and learning from one's mistakes is what matters in life. The Prince of Egypt has so much in it, so much packed into a movie that begins with a silly chariot race and cartoony slapstick. I cannot fathom how this can exist. I cannot believe this is the second movie. It's one thing when a studio not known for bangers drops something insane. Sony dropping Into the Spider-Verse was crazy, but at least it wasn't their second movie. There's too much to talk about with Prince of Egypt. The animation's gorgeous, Ramesses II is a fantastic villain, Moses is an underrated protagonist, the parting of the sea and the angel of death and the burning bush are all gorgeous, story's great, pacing great, music's great. The movie's unreal. It's unbelievable. It's majestic, wondrous, amazing, life-changing. This is a movie I can see changing someone's life, where the message, accessibility, and the real feeling could truly change someone, that could leave you walking out rethinking your outlook on things. And it's a DreamWorks movie! The second ever DreamWorks movie! That's insane. I love The Prince of Egypt, and it doesn't take a scholar of the literary arts to understand why. You know, going into this, I was expecting this to be a pretty clean and shut Prince of Egypt sweep. I love that movie, you should know that by now at least, if not before even watching this. I didn't know any of the reputation of any of these movies I'd not seen, but I was genuinely stunned by the quality of Song of the Sea, and it really did give Prince of Egypt a run for its money. I genuinely give both like that coveted 10 out of 10 score, and generally I'm happy with this little project. For what was just a bit I brought up as a joke one time, I got to watch several movies I probably never would have otherwise, and with the exception of Hop, I don't think any of these are outright bad films. I really have nothing to say beyond this point, because I don't have strong feelings on the overarching theme of the second movie. I don't have any faux poignant philosophical point about the meaning of enjoying life as a child. Little Prince already does that. It's extremely impressive that two of them are as good as they are, but otherwise, expected that the rest are overall decent, but not phenomenal. One would expect with at least debut films, more often they'll either be extremely good because an animation studio wants to put their best foot forward, or really bad because it's the first go. The second movie I think is generally more understandable if it's kind of middle of the road. I hope you enjoyed. This video can be considered an open call to arms for someone else out there to rank all of the third films. For the love of Christ, if you do that, probably just use Anomalisa for Paramount Animation. Don't look at the Wikipedia list, ignore that. But that's all from me for today. I will see you all in another video. Have a good one, lads. And that would be that. That's the video. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I definitely had a fun time making it. We're 2 out of 4, halfway through the 4 rankings that I've watched all the movies for and have written and just need to record and edit. Next time we will be tackling every live-action Hasbro movie, which, based on how Hasbro is going, might be the definitive ranking for all time, because I have no idea if they're even going to make another one. Can only hope. I mean, then again, you'll see how miserable that video gets. The quality of these movies drops off pretty far as you go through the full. You know, you have the best movies, according to Shave Ruler's, the top rank of every one of his rankings, which were all at least good. And then you got this one, which, you know, just had one stinker in it. And then you got the Hasbro one, to which I don't know if Hop would even make bottom 3. So, yeah. And then the one after that is Video Brinquedo, to which, hilariously, I don't even know if Hop would make top 3. But that's not important. Yeah. So, I hope you look forward to the Brinquedo and Hasbro rankings. I will have a lot of fun making them, because I've done watching them, and that's the hard part. So, thank you to everyone scrolling by on screen right now who's supporting me on Patreon. Thank you to you for watching the video and supporting me as well. Please engage with my video. I would like to make more rankings, but they don't get enough views. And no, that's that. I guess that's that. What else do I have to say? yeah, you can support me on Patreon if you want, where you could have watched this ranking early for only like $1. And yep, so yeah, and if you go, you can also access my Patreon-only Discord, where you can make me say stupid shit, which we'll do again. We're going back in time to the first Thanksgiving to get turkeys off the menu. That's right. We're going back in time to the first... I've never watched this movie. Aw. I do like me a good wallaby. Ugh. Alright, I guess I'll just take this one seriously.
I am the bone of my bait. Bait is my body, and bait is my blood. I have created over 1,000 baits, unknown to death, nor known to life. Have withstood pain to create many baits, yet those baits will never hold anything. So as I pray, unlimited bait rewards!
No, I'm not rapping. My name is Nemesis Bloodreich, and I can safely say that Surf's Up is the most cinematic and beautiful thing I've ever watched. I should have dedicated the entire video to it. I have disappointed my Patreons, my family, and most importantly, Biffles Wiedenson, the 623rd. It's 623rd, not 600th and 23rd. That would imply he's 600th for one thing and 23rd for another. Unfortunately, all my opinions in this video are irrelevant because the funny crabman says differently. All hail Tamatoa, praise his name for he is the turtle of animation.
Wretched human!
This is from 3 feet away. I guess I'll do the Optimus Prime Cool Cat version.
Wretched cat!
Oh no! Oh god. Why is that so funny? Why is it funny? Why do I think it's funny? I'm broken. Something broke in me. Alright, that's all. Thanks for watching. Have a good one, fellas, and piss off.